It's 2:47 a.m. You're staring at the ceiling, and there they are again. That person who shattered your heart 2 years ago. You've blocked their number, deleted their photos, even moved cities. But somehow, they're still here, living rent-free in your mind, showing up in your dreams, hijacking your thoughts when you're supposed to be over it. Here's what nobody tells you. The harder you try to forget someone, the deeper they burrow into your consciousness. It's like your brain is working against you, right? Well, 500 years ago, a Buddhist monk discovered something that will blow your mind. He found that the people who won't leave our thoughts aren't stuck there by accident. They're actually mirrors, reflecting back the exact wounds we're desperate to avoid healing. But here's the part that changes everything. And this is going to sound crazy. What if I told you that this person tormenting your mind is actually your soul's greatest teacher? What if their persistent presence isn't the problem, but the solution to your deepest pain? I'm about to share 7 ancient Buddhist secrets that reveal why certain people become permanent residents in your head. But warning, this isn't another just let go video. This is about recognizing that your obsessive thoughts are actually spiritual assignments. And once you understand what they're really teaching you, they lose their power over you completely. By the end of this video, you'll never look at that person the same way again. You'll understand why fighting these thoughts makes them stronger, and how to transform what feels like mental torture into the key to your freedom. If you're ready to stop being haunted by someone and start being healed by them, stay with me. Because the first reason they won't leave your thoughts will completely flip everything you thought you knew about obsessive thinking. And it starts with a story about a merchant who couldn't forgive. There was once a wealthy merchant named Sudatta who prided himself on being a fair and honest businessman. For 15 years, he had worked alongside his partner, Upali, building a trading empire that stretched across multiple kingdoms. They were more than business partners. They were like brothers, sharing profits equally, trusting each other with their families' futures. But one monsoon season, when trade routes were flooded and money was scarce, Sudatta discovered something that shattered his world. Upali had been secretly siphoning gold from their shared treasury for over 3 years. Not just a little. Nearly half of everything Sudatta had worked his entire life to build was gone. When confronted, Upali showed no remorse. He simply shrugged and said, "You were always too trusting, Sudatta. In business, only the clever survive." Then he disappeared in the night, taking what remained of their partnership funds. Now here's where it gets interesting. Sudatta tried everything to move on. He started a new business, made new partnerships, even became wealthier than before. But 3 years later, Upali's face still appeared in his mind every single morning. His betrayer's voice still echoed in his head during every business meeting. The man who had ruined him was somehow still ruining his peace, day after day. Finally, tormented and exhausted, Sudatta sought out the Buddha. "Blessed One," he said, "this man stole my gold and disappeared, but somehow he steals my peace every single day. Why can't I forget someone who clearly forgot about me the moment he left?" The Buddha looked at Sudatta with infinite compassion and said, "Tell me, when you think of Upali, What do you feel? Rage, betrayal, humiliation. And before Upali betrayed you, did these feelings exist somewhere inside you? Sudatta paused, confused. I don't understand. Think carefully. In your childhood, perhaps with your father who was also a merchant, or with friends who might have taken advantage of your generosity, were there other times when you felt this same rage, this same humiliation? 4. Suddenly, Sudatta's eyes filled with tears. Yes, my father always said I was too soft for business. My older brother used to steal my toys and claim I had given them to him. I felt this feeling of being foolish and used, many times before. Now you begin to see, said the Buddha. Upali did not create these wounds in you. He simply pressed on wounds that were already there. He showed you pain that was already living inside you. Pain you had been carrying for years without healing it. This is the first profound reason why someone won't leave your thoughts. They are serving as a mirror, reflecting back your deepest unhealed wounds. But here's what most people miss, and this is crucial. The wound isn't really about them. It never was. Think about this for a moment. Why doesn't every person who wrongs you occupy your thoughts forever? Why doesn't every rejection, every betrayal, every disappointment create this same obsessive mental loop? It's because some people press on fresh bruises, while others press on wounds that never properly healed. In Buddhist teaching, we call this karmic resonance. Certain people enter our lives precisely because they carry the exact energy signature that will trigger our unhealed trauma. It's not that they're trying to hurt us, though sometimes they are. It's that their presence, their behavior, their way of being in the world acts like a tuning fork, vibrating at the exact frequency that makes our old wounds sing with pain. But here's where Western psychology and Buddhist wisdom diverge completely. Psychology might tell you to process the trauma, to understand where it came from, to work through it in therapy. And those things can be helpful. But Buddhism goes deeper. Buddhism says, this person is not your wound. They are your teacher, showing you exactly where your healing work needs to happen. The Buddha taught Sudatta something revolutionary. Every person who triggers intense emotion in you is showing you a part of yourself that needs your love and attention. Upali is gone, but the wound he revealed, your deep fear of being taken advantage of, your childhood belief that you are too trusting, too soft, not clever enough. That wound is still here, still bleeding, still calling for your healing. Now, I want you to pause for a moment and think about the person who won't leave your mind. When their face appears in your thoughts, what feeling immediately arises? Anger, sadness, fear, humiliation? That feeling, write it down, because this is crucial. That feeling existed in you long before this person entered your life. They didn't create it. They revealed it. This is why fighting the thoughts doesn't work. This is why trying to forget them only makes them more present. Because your psyche, your soul, is desperately trying to get your attention. It's saying, look here, this wound needs healing. This pain needs your love. This part of you that feels broken needs to be made whole. In Zen monasteries, there's a saying, "The person who angers you most is your greatest teacher, because they show you exactly where you are not free." Upali wasn't Sudatta's enemy. He was his mirror, reflecting back a wound that had been festering since childhood. When Sudatta finally understood this, when he stopped focusing on Upali's betrayal and started focusing on his own need for healing, something miraculous happened. The obsessive thoughts began to fade. Not because he forgot what happened, but because he finally gave his wounded inner child the attention and love it had been crying out for. But what if the wound goes even deeper than this lifetime? What if the person haunting your thoughts is connected to you by threads that stretch back through multiple incarnations, multiple lives, multiple opportunities to heal the same lesson? This brings us to the second reason why someone becomes permanently lodged in your consciousness. In a remote monastery high in the mountains of Tibet, there lived a monk named Tenzin who had dedicated his life to meditation and enlightenment. He had been celibate for over 20 years, had mastered the most advanced spiritual practices, and was respected by all who knew him as a model of Buddhist discipline. But every night, without fail, Tenzin would dream of his mother. Now, you might think this sounds sweet, a son missing his mother. But these weren't tender dreams of love and connection. These were dreams filled with arguments that had never been resolved, conversations that had never been finished, and a crushing weight of guilt that followed him from sleep into his waking hours. Tenzin's mother, Dharma, had died suddenly when he was 25, just days before he was supposed to visit her. They had been in the middle of a terrible fight. She wanted him to abandon his spiritual path, get married, and give her grandchildren. He had stormed out, telling her that she didn't understand his calling, that she was being selfish and controlling. Those were the last words they ever spoke to each other. For 20 years, her face had appeared in his dreams. For 20 years, he heard her voice during his deepest meditations. She would appear angry, disappointed, sometimes weeping. Other times, she seemed to be trying to tell him something urgent, but he could never quite make out her words. Finally, desperate and ashamed that his spiritual practice couldn't free him from these nightly visitations, Tenzin sought counsel from the monastery's eldest master, an ancient teacher named Lobsang Tenzin. "Master," he confessed, "I have failed as a monk. My mother, who died 20 years ago, still haunts my dreams. I cannot find peace. I cannot achieve the detachment that our practice requires. What is wrong with me?" The old master listened quietly, then asked a simple question. "Tell me, what was left unfinished between you and your mother when she died?" "Everything," Tenzin whispered. "Our fight was never resolved. I never told her I loved her, despite our disagreement. She never understood why I chose this path. She died thinking I didn't care about her happiness." "And what do you think she was trying to tell you in these dreams?" Tenzin thought for a long moment. Sometimes it feels like she's trying to bless my path, like she's trying to tell me she understands now. But sometimes it feels like she's still angry, still wanting me to choose differently." The master nodded slowly. In Buddhist teaching, when someone dies with unresolved emotions, unfinished business, incomplete understanding between souls. An energetic thread remains. We call this karmic debt. Not debt in the sense of owing money, but debt in the sense of incomplete emotional and spiritual transactions. He explained to Tenzin something profound. Your mother is not haunting you from beyond. Your own soul is haunting you with the incompleteness of that relationship. There are words that needed to be spoken, forgiveness that needed to be given and received, understanding that needed to be reached. Until these karmic debts are resolved, part of your consciousness will remain tied to her memory. This is the second reason why someone won't leave your thoughts. You have unfinished karmic business with them, and this goes far beyond simple regret or missing someone. This is about soul-level contracts that remain incomplete. In Buddhist understanding, every significant relationship in our lives is a karmic agreement. Before we incarnate, our souls essentially say to other souls, I will help you learn this lesson, and you will help me learn that one. We will play these roles for each other until we both grow through the experience. But sometimes, one person dies, or the relationship ends, or circumstances separate you before the lesson is complete. The spiritual transaction remains unfinished. Part of your soul energy remains bound to theirs, like a contract that was signed but never fulfilled. Now, think about the person who occupies your mind. Is there something that feels unfinished between you? Words that were never spoken, forgiveness that was never given or received, a lesson that one of you was supposed to learn from the other, but the relationship ended before that learning could happen. This is why certain people feel like unfinished business even years after they're gone from your life. Your soul recognizes that there's still work to be done, still growth to be achieved, still understanding to be reached. But here's what's beautiful about Buddhist teaching on this subject. You don't need the other person to be physically present to complete the karmic contract. The work can be done energetically, spiritually, through practices that honor the relationship and complete the learning that was meant to happen. The master taught Tenzin a powerful practice. Every night before sleep, he would sit in meditation and have the conversation with his mother that they never got to have when she was alive. He would tell her about his spiritual path, help her understand his choices. He would listen for her response in his heart. He would ask for her forgiveness for the harsh words, and offer his own forgiveness for her attempts to control his life. Most importantly, he would thank her for the role she played in his spiritual development. Even the difficult parts, even the conflict, because it had taught him about detachment, about following his truth even when others disagreed. After months of this practice, something extraordinary happened. One night, his mother appeared in his dream one final time. But this time, she was smiling. She placed her hands on his head in blessing and said, "My son, I understand now. Your path brings honor to our family. I am proud of you." When he woke up, he felt a profound sense of completion, as if a weight he had carried for 20 years had finally been lifted. The dreams stopped. The guilt dissolved. The karmic debt had been paid through conscious spiritual work. But sometimes, the person who haunts our thoughts isn't someone we need to forgive or be forgiven by. Sometimes, They represent something even more complex. Parts of ourselves that we've rejected and projected onto them, creating a psychological tug-of-war that can last for years. In a peaceful monastery in ancient China, there lived two monks who had entered the spiritual path at exactly the same time. Their names were Hui and Jing, and from the very first day, they couldn't have been more different. Hui was everything a monk was supposed to be. Calm, disciplined, graceful in his movements. When he walked, it was with perfect posture. When he spoke, his voice was soft and measured. During meditation, he sat like a statue, unmoved by any distraction. The other monks admired him. The masters praised his dedication. He seemed to embody the very essence of Buddhist perfection. Jing, on the other hand, was, well, human. He fidgeted during long meditations. Sometimes he laughed too loudly during meals. His robes were often wrinkled. He asked too many questions during teachings. Questions that seemed to come from genuine curiosity rather than spiritual discipline. And Hui couldn't stop thinking about him. Every time Jing laughed during silent reflection, Hui felt a surge of irritation. When Jing's stomach growled during fasting periods, Hui found himself consumed with judgment. When Jing fell asleep during evening prayers, Hui would lie awake afterward, thinking about how undisciplined his fellow monk was, how he was making a mockery of their sacred practice. This went on for 3 years. 3 years of Hui being tormented by Jing's very existence, even though Jing had never done anything directly to harm him. In fact, Jing was kind to everyone, helped with monastery chores without being asked, and seemed genuinely happy in his practice, despite his imperfections. Finally, Hui could bear it no longer. He approached the monastery's master, Venerable Chen, with his complaint. "Master," he said, "I cannot focus on my practice because of monk Jing. His lack of discipline is a constant distraction. His casual attitude toward our sacred practices disturbs my meditation. Perhaps he should be asked to leave, or at least be given stricter guidance." Master Chen listened quietly, then asked a question that would change Hui's life forever. "Tell me, Hui, what exactly about Jing disturbs you most?" His lack of seriousness, his casualness, the way he seems to take everything so lightly when we are supposed to be dedicated to the highest spiritual ideals. "I see. And tell me, before you became a monk, how did you behave?" Hui shifted uncomfortably. I was not always as disciplined as I am now." "Were you ever casual? Did you ever laugh too loudly? Did you ever find your mind wandering during important moments?" "Yes, but that's why I came here, to transcend those worldly behaviors." Master Chen smiled gently. "Hui, let me tell you something about the mind that few people understand. When we reject parts of ourselves, even parts that may need to be transcended, we don't actually make them disappear. We simply push them into the shadows of our consciousness. And from there, they project outward onto other people." He explained something profound. "You are not really seeing Jing when you look at him. You are seeing the parts of yourself that you have disowned. Your own capacity for spontaneity, for imperfection, for simple human joy. because you have rejected these qualities in yourself so completely. You cannot tolerate seeing them in him. This is the third reason why someone becomes lodged in your consciousness. They are carrying projections of your own shadow self, the parts of your personality that you've rejected, denied, or tried to eliminate. In Buddhist psychology, this is called the mirror mind. We think we're seeing others clearly, but we're actually seeing reflections of our own internal conflicts. The qualities that trigger the strongest reactions in us, whether positive or negative, are almost always qualities that we possess but have disowned. Think about the person who won't leave your thoughts. What is it about them that bothers you most? Their confidence, their vulnerability, their success, their apparent carelessness, their need for attention, their independence? Now, here's the uncomfortable truth. That quality exists in you too. Either it's something you've suppressed because you were taught it was bad, or it's something you've never allowed yourself to develop because you were afraid of what others might think. When Hui obsessed over Jing's casual attitude, he was really battling his own suppressed longing to be less rigid, less controlled, more spontaneous. But he had spent so much energy creating his perfect monk identity that he couldn't acknowledge these natural human impulses in himself. Master Chen gave Hui a practice that would transform his relationship with both Jing and himself. For the next month, I want you to meditate on this question. What quality in Jing am I not allowing myself to express? Don't think about it intellectually. Feel into it. Let the answer arise from your heart, not your mind. After weeks of this practice, Hui had a breakthrough. He realized that underneath all his rigid discipline was a terrified little boy who was afraid that if he relaxed even slightly, if he showed any imperfection, he would be rejected and abandoned. Jing's easy acceptance of his own humanity triggered Hui's deepest fear, that he was only lovable when he was perfect. But more than that, Hui discovered something beautiful. He actually envied Jing's ability to be authentically himself, flaws and all. The casual joy that he criticized was actually something his own soul was hungry for. The moment Hui acknowledged this shadow projection, his obsession with Jing began to dissolve. In fact, they eventually became close friends, with Jing helping Hui learn to laugh at himself, and Hui helping Jing develop greater focus in meditation. But shadow projection is just one form of mental attachment. Sometimes the person who haunts our thoughts represents something even more binding, our desperate need to control outcomes we have no power over. In a small village in ancient India, there lived a woman named Kisa Gotami, whose heart was breaking in a way that only a mother can understand. Her adult daughter, Sita, had left home 3 years ago after a terrible argument about Sita's choice to marry a man from a different caste. A decision that had brought shame upon their family in the eyes of their traditional community. Kisa Gotami had said things she regretted. Harsh words about duty, honor, and family reputation. In her anger and fear, she had told Sita never to return if she chose this path. And Sita, proud and stubborn like her mother, had taken her at her word and disappeared into the anonymity of a distant city. But every single day for 3 years, Kisa Gotami woke up rehearsing the same scenario in her mind. Sita would return, apologize for bringing shame to the family, realize her mistake, and they would reconcile. She imagined the exact words Sita would say, how she would look, perhaps thinner, perhaps sadder, but definitely repentant. Every morning, Kisa Gotami would clean the house as if Sita might return that day. She would cook Sita's favorite foods. She would practice the speech she would give, gracious but firm, forgiving but clear about the proper way to behave. She had the entire reunion choreographed in her mind, down to the tears they would both shed and the embrace that would heal everything. But months turned to years, and Sita never came. No word, no message, no sign that she even thought about her mother or regretted her choice. And still, Kisa Gotami's mind remained trapped in the same endless loop of imagined reconciliation. Finally, exhausted by her own thoughts, she sought out the Buddha, who was visiting nearby. "Blessed One," she said, "my daughter left me 3 years ago, and I cannot stop thinking about her return. Every day, I imagine how it will happen, what she will say, how we will heal our relationship. But she never comes, and these thoughts are driving me to madness. How can I make her return to me?" The Buddha looked at her with infinite compassion and asked, "Kisa Gotami, do you control the rising and setting of the sun?" "No." "Blessed One, do you control the coming of the monsoon rains?" "No." "Do you control the movement of your daughter's heart?" Kisa Gotami's eyes filled with tears. "No, but I am her mother. Surely there must be something I can do." "Tell me," the Buddha continued gently, "in all your imagining of her return, in all your mental rehearsals of reconciliation, has any of it brought her closer to your door?" "No," she whispered. "If anything, I feel more distant from her now than when she first left." The Buddha then taught her something profound. "You are not thinking about your daughter. You are thinking about an outcome, a specific future that you believe will bring you peace. But by clinging to this one imagined outcome, you have imprisoned yourself in a mental cage. You have made your happiness dependent on something you cannot control. This is the fourth reason why someone won't leave your thoughts. You have become attached to a specific outcome involving them, and your mind is trapped in endless loops, trying to figure out how to make that outcome happen. In Buddhist teaching, this is called outcome attachment, and it's one of the most subtle forms of suffering because it disguises itself as love, hope, or even determination. You think you're thinking about the person, but you're actually thinking about a future scenario that you believe will finally give you peace, closure, or happiness. Listen carefully to this distinction, because it's crucial. There's a difference between loving someone and being attached to an outcome with them. Love flows freely, without conditions. Outcome attachment creates mental prison bars. Think about the person who occupies your mind. Are you really thinking about them as they actually are right now? Or are you thinking about some future scenario? Maybe you're imagining the apology they'll finally give you, the moment they'll realize what they lost, the reconciliation that will heal everything, the recognition of your worth they'll eventually have, the relationship returning to how it used to be, the closure conversation that will finally make sense of everything. If you're honest, you'll probably realize that most of your obsessive thoughts aren't actually about the person. They're about these imagined futures. And every time reality doesn't match your mental script, you suffer. Every day, they don't apologize. Don't return. I don't realize what they've lost. You feel the pain of that gap between what you want to happen and what is actually happening. The Buddha taught Kisa Gotami a revolutionary practice. Instead of imagining how your daughter should return to you, practice loving her exactly as she is right now, even in her absence, even in her choice to stay away. Send her loving thoughts without any agenda, without any requirement that she respond. Love her freedom, even if it means freedom from you. This was almost impossible for Kisa Gotami at first. Her mind kept jumping back to the scenarios, the scripts, the imagined outcomes. But gradually, as she practiced unconditional love without outcome, attachment, something miraculous happened. The obsessive thoughts began to fade. Not because Sita returned, but because Kisa Gotami stopped making her peace dependent on her daughter's choices. She learned to love without controlling, to care without clinging. Interestingly, 6 months after Kisa Gotami released her attachment to the outcome, Sita did visit. But their reunion was nothing like what Kisa Gotami had imagined, and it was more beautiful because of that. There was no dramatic apology, no admission of wrongdoing, just two women who had both grown and changed, meeting each other freshly, without the burden of scripted expectations. But outcome attachment is only part of the puzzle. Sometimes the person who haunts our thoughts represents something even more fundamental. They've become so intertwined with our sense of self that we literally don't know who we are without them. In the mountains of ancient Tibet, there lived a young monk named Pemba, who had found his life's purpose in serving his beloved master, Rinpoche Tenzin. For 12 years, Pemba had been more than a student. He had become his master's shadow, his voice, his hands in the world. Pemba woke before dawn to prepare his master's tea. He memorized every teaching, every gesture, every preference. When Rinpoche Tenzin walked, Pemba walked 3 steps behind. When the master spoke, Pemba felt his own lips moving silently along with the words. When other monks asked Pemba about his own spiritual insights, he would only quote his master's wisdom. "I am nothing without my teacher," Pemba would say, and he meant it as the highest spiritual devotion. "My only purpose is to serve his enlightenment." The other monks admired this dedication, but Pemba's identity had become so completely merged with his master that he had essentially disappeared into the relationship. He no longer had opinions of his own, preferences of his own, or even thoughts that weren't somehow connected to Rinpoche Tenzin. Then one winter morning, everything changed. Rinpoche Tenzin called Pemba to his chamber and spoke words that would shatter the young monk's entire sense of self. "Pemba, my faithful student, I am sending you away. You have become too dependent on my presence. You must go to the monastery in the valley and find your own path. You are no longer welcome as my personal attendant." Pemba felt like he was dying. "Master, what have I done wrong? How have I failed you? Please, let me correct my mistakes. I cannot exist without serving you." "That," said Rinpoche Tenzin sadly, "is exactly the problem. You have forgotten who you are beneath your devotion to me. Go, and do not return until you remember. For months after being sent away, Pemba was completely lost. He couldn't meditate because every technique reminded him of his master. He couldn't eat because every meal felt meaningless without preparing his master's food first. He couldn't even introduce himself to new people because he had no identity beyond Rinpoche Tenzin's devoted student. Most painfully, Rinpoche Tenzin occupied every moment of his thoughts, not in a loving way, but in a desperate, panicked way. Who was he without his master's approval? What was his purpose without his master's mission? What did his own voice sound like when it wasn't echoing his master's teachings? This is the fifth reason why someone becomes permanently lodged in your consciousness. You have fused your identity so completely with them that you literally don't know who you are without them. In Buddhist psychology, this is called identity fusion, and it's different from simple love or even attachment. When you love someone, you remain two separate beings choosing to connect. When you're attached to someone, you're still you, just clinging to them. But when you've fused your identity with another person, the boundaries between self and other have dissolved in an unhealthy way. Think about the person who occupies your mind. Have you become so intertwined with them that you've lost track of where you end and they begin? Some signs of identity fusion include: you define yourself primarily in relationship to them. I am their ex. I am their child. I am their former best friend. You've made decisions based on what they would want, even when they're not around. You feel like you don't know how to make choices without considering their opinions first. Your sense of worth is entirely dependent on their approval or treatment of you. You've adopted their interests, beliefs, or ways of speaking as your own. When identity fusion happens, the person doesn't just occupy your thoughts, they occupy your entire sense of self. That's why letting go feels impossible. It's not just about missing them, it's about not knowing who you are without them. After months of confusion and despair, Pemba finally sought guidance from the Valley Monastery's abbot, a wise old teacher named Lobsang. Master, Pemba confessed, I have lost myself completely. I don't know who I am without my teacher. I can't stop thinking about him because he has become me, and I have become him. How do I find myself again? Lobsang smiled gently and gave him a practice that would change everything. For the next month, I want you to do something every day that your master would never do. Something small. Eat a food he dislikes. Take a walk at a time he wouldn't approve of. Have a conversation he wouldn't be interested in. Not to rebel against him, but to remember that you exist as a separate being. This terrified Pemba at first. It felt like betrayal, like spiritual suicide. But slowly, as he practiced having small experiences that were purely his own, something miraculous began to happen. He started to remember preferences he had forgotten he had, opinions that weren't just echoes of his master's voice, interests that were uniquely his own. The obsessive thoughts about Rinpoche Tenzin began to fade, not because he loved his master less, but because he was finally loving himself enough to exist as a separate person. After a full year of rediscovering his individual identity, Pemba returned to his master. But this time, he came as a whole person choosing devotion, rather than as a half person desperately seeking completion. Rinpoche Tenzin welcomed him back with tears of joy, saying, "Now you are truly my student, because you are truly yourself." But identity fusion is just one way the ego tries to avoid the ultimate truth that terrifies most people. Sometimes the person who haunts our thoughts represents our desperate attempt to make permanent something that was always meant to change. In a beautiful mountain village in ancient Nepal, there lived an elderly man named Bharat, whose love story had become legendary among the villagers. He and his wife Kamala had been married for 47 years, and in all that time, no one had ever seen them argue, speak harshly to each other, or spend a day apart. Every morning, Bharat would wake before dawn to pick fresh flowers for Kamala's hair. Every evening, she would massage his tired feet after his work in the fields. They had created a rhythm of love so perfect, so harmonious, that the younger couples in the village would watch them and dream of having such an eternal bond. When Kamala suddenly died of a fever at age 68, something in Bharat broke that went far deeper than normal grief. He couldn't accept that she was gone. Not just emotionally, he literally could not accept the reality of impermanence. He kept her clothes exactly where she had left them. He continued to pick flowers for her each morning, placing them on her pillow. He set 2 plates at every meal and would talk to her empty chair as if she were still there. But more than that, Bharat's mind became trapped in an endless loop of memories, trying to preserve every moment they had shared exactly as it had been. He would spend hours each day mentally replaying their conversations, their touches, their shared glances, polishing these memories like precious jewels, terrified that if he let them fade even slightly, he would lose her completely. "She is not gone," he would tell concerned neighbors. "Our love is eternal. She is just temporarily absent. This feeling between us could never die." 3 years passed this way. Bharat aged rapidly, barely eating, rarely sleeping, existing only in his memories and his desperate attempt to keep their relationship frozen in time, exactly as it had been. Finally, his grown son brought him to see a Buddhist teacher named Ani Pema, who was known throughout the region for her wisdom about grief and impermanence. "Venerable Mother," Bharat said, "everyone tells me I must accept that my wife is gone, but they don't understand. What Kamala and I had was not ordinary love. It was beyond death, beyond time. How can something so perfect, so eternal, simply end?" Ani Pema listened with deep compassion, then asked him a simple question. "Bharat, when you and Kamala first met, were you the same person you were on the day she died?" "Of course not. We both grew. We both changed over the years." "And was your love for her exactly the same on your wedding day as it was 40 years later?" Bharat paused. "No. It deepened. It matured. It became richer. So your love was already changing, already flowing, already impermanent, even while she was alive?" This hit Bharat like a thunderbolt. He had never considered that the very love he was trying to preserve had never been static to begin with. It had been a living, breathing, evolving thing that grew and changed with each passing day. Ani Pema continued, "You are suffering not because Kamala died, but because you are trying to make permanent something that was always in flow. You are trying to freeze a river, and then wondering why you can no longer drink from it. This is the sixth reason why someone becomes permanently lodged in your consciousness. You are fighting against the fundamental truth of impermanence, trying to keep alive something that was always meant to change and flow. In Buddhist teaching, the illusion of permanence is one of the root causes of human suffering. We fall in love with moments, relationships, and people, and then we try desperately to stop time, to make eternal what was always temporary. Think about the person who occupies your mind. Are you trying to preserve them exactly as they were at a particular moment? Are you holding on to a version of your relationship that no longer exists? Are you mentally fighting against the natural flow of change? The cruel irony is that by trying to make permanent what was always impermanent, we actually destroy our ability to love it fully. When Bharat tried to freeze his memories of Kamala, he stopped being able to appreciate the living love they had shared. His attempt to preserve their relationship had turned it into a museum exhibit. Beautiful, but lifeless. Ani Pema taught Bharat a revolutionary practice. Instead of trying to keep Kamala exactly as she was, honor how your love for her continues to change and grow, even after her death. Let your grief transform. Let your memories evolve. Let your love for her become something new. This terrified Bharat initially. It felt like he was being asked to betray their eternal bond. But gradually, he began to understand that true love isn't about preserving someone in amber. It's about allowing the love itself to flow, to transform, to become whatever it needs to become. As he stopped fighting the natural flow of change, something beautiful happened. His obsessive thoughts about preserving Kamala exactly as she had been began to fade. In their place came a deeper, more alive love, one that honored their past while allowing space for his continued growth and healing. He realized that trying to make their love permanent had actually been disrespecting its true nature, which was always about flow, growth, and transformation. But there's one final reason why someone becomes etched into our consciousness, a reason so profound that it transforms our understanding of challenging relationships completely. In the ancient forests of India, there lived a revered Buddhist master named Nagarjuna, whose monastery was known throughout the land for producing enlightened monks. Students traveled from distant kingdoms just to sit at his feet and learn. His teachings were so profound, his presence so peaceful, that even the birds seemed to quiet when he spoke. But there was one student who drove Master Nagarjuna to the very edge of his spiritual composure. His name was Arjuna, not the famous warrior, but a young man whose every quality seemed designed to test every ounce of Nagarjuna's patience. Arjuna was argumentative during teachings, constantly questioning not just the Dharma, but the master's authority to teach it. He was lazy during work meditation, sleeping during evening prayers, and somehow always managed to disrupt the peaceful harmony of monastery life. Most disturbing of all, Arjuna seemed to take pleasure in finding Nagarjuna's weak spots. If the master showed even a flicker of irritation, Arjuna would push harder. If Nagarjuna tried to maintain perfect composure, Arjuna would create chaos until some human reaction leaked through. For 3 years, this dance continued. Other students began to whisper that Arjuna should be expelled. Senior monks suggested that he was too disruptive for monastery life. But somehow, Master Nagarjuna couldn't bring himself to send Arjuna away, even though the young man occupied his thoughts far more than any student ever had. One night, after Arjuna had particularly disrupted an important teaching by loudly challenging the concept of non-self in front of visiting dignitaries, Nagarjuna sat alone in his chamber, frustrated and confused. Why can't I stop thinking about this student? He wondered. I have taught hundreds of monks. I have achieved states of consciousness that few humans ever reach. Yet this one person has the power to disturb my peace like no other. What is wrong with me? In that moment of honest self-inquiry, a profound realization dawned on him. Every quality that Arjuna displayed, the questioning, the rebellion, the refusal to blindly accept authority, these were aspects that Nagarjuna had completely suppressed in himself, on his path to becoming a perfect spiritual teacher. Nagarjuna had been so committed to embodying serene wisdom that he had forgotten how to question deeply, how to challenge assumptions, how to maintain any healthy skepticism. In his quest for spiritual perfection, he had become rigid, authoritarian, and disconnected from the passionate inquiry that had originally led him to the Dharma. But more than that, he realized something that would revolutionize his understanding of difficult relationships. Arjuna wasn't his problem. Arjuna was his assignment. The next morning, instead of trying to manage or correct Arjuna, Nagarjuna approached him with curiosity and gratitude. Arjuna, he said, I want to thank you. The young man looked suspicious. Thank me for what, Master? For showing me that I had become spiritually arrogant. For revealing that I had lost touch with the beginner's mind that is essential to true wisdom. For refusing to let me hide behind the role of perfect teacher, when what I really needed was to remember how to be a genuine student. Arjuna was stunned. You're thanking me for disrupting your teachings. I'm thanking you for disrupting my illusions. You see, I now understand that certain people enter our lives not to make us comfortable, but to complete our spiritual education. You have been my greatest teacher, precisely because you challenged everything I thought I had mastered. This is the seventh and most profound reason why someone becomes permanently etched in your consciousness. They are your sacred assignment. A soul who has agreed to play a specific role in your spiritual development, even if that role is difficult or painful. In the deepest Buddhist teachings about karma and rebirth, there's an understanding that before we incarnate, our souls make agreements with other souls. These aren't romantic agreements or friendship contracts. They're spiritual assignments. I will challenge you in this way so you can grow in that direction. You will trigger this wound in me so I can finally heal it. The people who affect us most deeply, whether through love or frustration, inspiration or betrayal, are often souls who have taken on the sacred task of catalyzing our evolution. They agreed to be the mirror, the teacher, the catalyst, the trigger that would force us to face exactly what we need to face for our next level of growth. Think about the person who won't leave your mind. What if their persistent presence isn't a problem to be solved, but a spiritual assignment to be completed? What if every time you think of them, your soul is saying, "Pay attention. There's still learning here. There's still growth available." This perspective completely transforms how we relate to difficult people in our lives. Instead of asking, "How do I get them out of my head?" we start asking, "What is this person trying to teach me about myself? What quality are they reflecting back that I need to integrate? What wound are they touching that needs healing? What strength are they forcing me to develop?" Master Nagarjuna's relationship with Arjuna became the foundation for a completely new approach to teaching. Instead of maintaining perfect composure, he learned to be authentically human while still holding wisdom. Instead of demanding blind acceptance of his teachings, he encouraged deep questioning and personal exploration. Most remarkably, as Nagarjuna integrated the lessons that Arjuna had been trying to teach him, the student's disruptive behavior naturally transformed. Arjuna became one of the monastery's most dedicated practitioners, not because he was forced to change, but because his assignment had been completed. He had successfully awakened his teacher to a more authentic and integrated way of being. But here's the most beautiful part of this teaching. Once you recognize someone as your sacred assignment, once you understand what they're here to teach you, and begin integrating those lessons, their hold on your consciousness naturally begins to release. Not because you've gotten rid of them, but because you've received their gift. The obsessive thoughts fade not through force or forgetting, but through completion. The spiritual transaction that your souls agreed to has been fulfilled. The lesson has been learned. The growth has occurred. The assignment is complete. Sometimes this happens while the person is still in your life, and your relationship transforms into something healthier and more authentic. Sometimes it happens after they're gone, and you realize that their greatest gift was in leaving, forcing you to develop qualities you never would have cultivated otherwise. But whether they stay or go, whether they ever know the role they played or remain completely unconscious of it, the sacred assignment has been fulfilled. Your soul has received what it needed for its next level of evolution. Now that you understand these 7 profound reasons why someone won't leave your thoughts, you're ready to learn the Buddhist path to transforming this understanding into actual freedom. Now that you understand why that person won't leave your mind, the question becomes, how do you transform this understanding into actual freedom? There once was a student who approached the great Zen master Huangpo with this exact dilemma. "Master," he said, "I understand now that my obsessive thoughts about my former teacher are showing me my own spiritual wounds. I see that he is reflecting back my need for approval, my fear of abandonment. But knowing this doesn't make the thoughts stop. How do I move from understanding to freedom?" Huangpo smiled and pointed to a river flowing beside them. "Tell me," he said, "what happens when you throw a stone into that river?" "It creates ripples, then the water becomes calm again." "And what if you tried to stop the ripples by hitting the water with a stick?" "That would create more disturbance, not less." "Exactly. Your mind is like this river. That person is like the stone. The obsessive thoughts are the ripples. Fighting the ripples only creates more turbulence. But if you allow the river to flow naturally, the ripples settle on their own. This metaphor contains the entire Buddhist path to liberation from persistent thoughts. It's not about eliminating the thoughts or forgetting the person. It's about changing your relationship with the thoughts so completely that they lose their power to disturb your peace. Here are the 5 steps that Buddhist masters have used for centuries to transform mental imprisonment into spiritual freedom. Step 1. Mindful observation without resistance. When thoughts of this person arise, don't fight them. Don't judge yourself for having them. Don't try to push them away. Instead, observe them with the same gentle curiosity you might watch clouds moving across the sky. In ancient monasteries, monks were taught to greet difficult thoughts like unexpected guests. Oh, there's that thought about my former lover again. Hello, thought. I see you. What do you need to show me today? This practice transforms you from a victim of your thoughts into a conscious observer of them. Remember, you are not your thoughts. You are the awareness that notices thoughts. Step 2. Compassionate inquiry into the deeper pattern. Once you can observe the thoughts without being swept away by them, begin asking deeper questions. Not how do I stop thinking about them, but what is this thought trying to teach me? Is it showing you an unhealed wound that needs attention? Is it pointing toward a quality you need to develop in yourself? Is it revealing an attachment to an outcome you cannot control? Is it highlighting how much of your identity you've tied to this person? The Buddha taught that every persistent thought is a messenger. Once you receive the message, the messenger naturally departs. Step 3. Releasing attachment through acceptance. This is perhaps the most challenging step. You must learn to hold the memory of this person, the pain they caused, or the love you shared, without grasping for any particular outcome. There's a beautiful Zen practice for this. Imagine holding your thoughts about this person like water in your cupped hands. You can hold water gently, allowing it to rest in your palms. But the moment you squeeze your fingers together, trying to possess it, the water slips away. Practice holding your memories, your love, even your pain, with open hands. Present with them, but not possessive of them. Step 4. Redirecting energy toward presence. Each time thoughts of this person arise, use them as a bell of mindfulness. Instead of getting lost in the story of the thought, use its appearance as a reminder to return to this moment. Feel your feet on the ground. Notice your breath. Look around and really see your current environment. The person who occupies your thoughts exists in memory. You exist right here, right now. Over time, that person who once represented escape from the present moment becomes your doorway back into presence. Step 5. Loving kindness meditation practice. This final step transforms any remaining emotional charge around the person. Buddhist tradition offers a powerful practice called metta meditation, where you send genuine good wishes to yourself, to this person, and to all beings. Begin with yourself. May I be free from suffering. May I find peace. May I be happy. Then extend to them. May they be free from suffering. May they find peace. May they be happy. This isn't about pretending you're not hurt or forcing forgiveness. It's about recognizing that your freedom doesn't depend on their suffering. Your peace doesn't require their punishment. As you practice these 5 steps, something miraculous begins to happen. The person who once felt like a stone disrupting the peaceful river of your mind becomes simply part of the natural flow. Their memory may still arise, but it no longer creates turbulence. It simply passes through your awareness like everything else. You realize that true freedom isn't about never thinking of them again. It's about thinking of them. When you do, with complete inner peace, they become like any other memory, present when relevant, absent when not, but never again possessing the power to steal your serenity. This is the ultimate teaching of Buddhism. We cannot control what arises in the mind, but we can transform our relationship with what arises. That person who once seemed like your greatest obstacle becomes, in the end, your unexpected teacher in the art of unconditional inner freedom. If this ancient wisdom has touched something deep within you, consider joining our community here at Echoes of Dharma. Subscribe to continue exploring how Buddhist teachings can illuminate the deepest patterns of human consciousness. May you find peace with all the visitors in your mind, knowing that each one brings a gift when seen through the eyes of wisdom.